Captain Cole Harrison stood at the helm of the Andromeda, his fingers dancing lightly across the console as his eyes scanned the screen. The ship had been drifting through deep space for what felt like an eternity, moving past stars that seemed to stretch on forever. The hum of the engines was the only sound that filled the otherwise silent command room. The crew of the Andromeda had become accustomed to the stillness of space, their days filled with research, routine tasks, and occasional moments of excitement. But today, something felt different. A soft beeping interrupted the silence. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris's voice came through the communication system. "We've received a distress signal. It's coming from a planet in the uncharted sector." Cole turned from the console, his expression hardening. The uncharted sector was known for its mysterious, often dangerous environments. A distress signal from there meant trouble, but the Andromeda was designed for such encounters. They had dealt with unknown forces before. Still, this felt different. He motioned for Harris to bring the signal up on the screen. The transmission was garbled, its message barely discernible. But there was one clear detail, a single word. "Help." "We're going in," Cole said, his voice steady. He didn't hesitate. The crew needed a purpose, and he wasn't going to turn his back on anyone in need. The planet they approached was covered in thick green forests, unlike any world they had visited before. The atmosphere was breathable, though the air was heavy with the scent of unfamiliar plants. Cole stood in the cockpit, watching as the planet's surface grew closer. It was beautiful in its own way, but it also gave him an unsettling feeling, like stepping into a place that was not meant to be explored. As the Andromeda descended, the crew readied themselves for whatever awaited them. Cole's first officer, Lieutenant Sawyer, stood beside him. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the terrain below. "This doesn't look right," Sawyer muttered. "No signs of civilization, no infrastructure at all." "Stay alert," Cole replied. "We don't know what we're dealing with." The ship landed with a gentle thud, the soft ground of the alien planet giving way beneath their weight. The crew disembarked, stepping into the thick forest. Strange, glowing plants illuminated the path ahead, casting an eerie light on their surroundings. The air was warm and damp, and the sounds of unseen creatures echoed through the trees. "We're not alone," said Harris, his voice low. He held his rifle tightly in his hand, scanning the darkness. Before Cole could respond, a figure appeared from the shadows. It was tall, humanoid in shape, but its features were distinctly alien. Its skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, and its eyes were too large for a human, glowing faintly in the dim light. The figure moved toward them with an air of grace, its steps silent on the forest floor. A second figure appeared, then another, and soon the entire crew was surrounded by these strange beings. They were humanoid, but their features were unlike anything Cole had ever seen. They wore simple robes that shimmered with light, their faces solemn yet strangely calm. The lead figure stepped forward, its glowing eyes fixed on Cole. It tilted its head, studying him with a curious gaze. The air between them felt thick with anticipation. "Human," the being said, its voice musical yet unfamiliar. The words were distorted, but somehow Cole could understand them. "Yes, I'm Captain Cole Harrison. We received your distress signal," Cole replied, his tone firm but respectful. He glanced at his crew, who were all on edge, their weapons at the ready. The alien raised a hand, signaling for them to lower their weapons. Slowly, the crew complied, though their hands remained near their sidearms. The alien's eyes never left Cole as it spoke again. "You are the humans who come from the stars," it said, its voice filled with both wonder and something deeper, something unsettling. "We have been waiting for you. We're here to help," Cole said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Can you tell us who sent the distress signal?" The alien's gaze shifted briefly, as if considering the question. It then nodded, turning to the others. The crew was led through the forest. following the glowing beings as they walked silently. After a short journey, they arrived at a clearing where a large, ornate structure stood. It was like nothing Cole had ever seen, a blend of organic shapes and technology that seemed both ancient and advanced at the same time. Inside the structure, the walls pulsed with soft light, and strange symbols covered every surface. The air felt different here, charged with energy that hummed in the background. The lead alien, who Cole now assumed to be the leader, turned to him and spoke. "We are the Trevani. We are not as you are. Our people do not know the bonds that you share. We do not know your ways, and yet we have been watching." "Watching?" Cole echoed. "For how long?" "For many cycles," the Trevani leader said. "We have studied your kind from afar, but now the time has come. We must know. We must understand." Cole felt a chill run down his spine. Understand what? The leader's gaze softened, as if it were a question they had long debated among themselves. How many times can humans mate? The question came out of nowhere, its directness taking Cole by surprise. It was not what he had expected, and for a moment he was at a loss for words. His crew shifted uncomfortably behind him, but Cole stood firm. The question hung in the air, its oddness striking him. There was a strange weight to it, as though it was more than just a curiosity. It felt like a test, or perhaps a request for something deeper. Cole cleared his throat, trying to compose himself. Humans can mate as many times as they want. But it's not just about mating, it's about connection, about love, about more than just biology. The alien seemed to process his words carefully. Connection. Love, it repeated, as if trying to grasp the meaning behind them. We do not understand. To us, reproduction is a simple process. There is no connection, no affection, only function. Cole felt a pang of sympathy. The Trevani, for all their technological advancements, seemed to lack something that humans took for granted. "That's the difference between us," he said. "Humans don't just reproduce.
We form bonds, we connect."
That's what makes us human." The alien leader's eyes flickered with something akin to confusion. "This is why we have brought you here. We wish to understand this bond, this connection." The princess, the most striking of the Trevani, stepped forward. She was taller than the others, her eyes a deeper shade of violet, and her presence commanded attention. She wore a crown of woven light, a delicate thing that shimmered with energy. Her gaze was fixed on Cole, as if she could read the very depths of his thoughts. "How many times can humans mate?" she asked again, her voice soft but piercing. It was as if her curiosity had consumed her, and this question was the only thing that mattered. Cole hesitated. This was no ordinary question. There was something else at play here, something more than mere biology. He looked into the princess's eyes, feeling an unspoken connection forming between them. "Humans can mate as many times as we need to," he said slowly, his voice steady. "But it's not just the act, it's the connection that matters. The love, the trust, that's what makes us who we are." The princess tilted her head, her expression unreadable. The room fell silent as she processed his words. Her eyes never left his, and for a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the energy around them. "I see," she finally said, her voice almost a whisper. "I did not expect that answer." The atmosphere shifted, as if something had clicked into place. The princess stepped back, her gaze lingering on Cole for just a moment longer before she turned away. The other Trevani watched in silence, their expressions unreadable. Cole felt a mixture of relief and uncertainty. This encounter was only the beginning, and he knew that what had just transpired would change everything. The Trevani had asked their question, But the answers they had received were only the start of a much deeper journey, one that could either bridge the gap between two vastly different cultures or drive them further apart. The crew was led to a chamber where they would rest for the night. As Cole lay down, his mind raced with the implications of what had just occurred. The princess's question had been more than just curiosity. It had been a request for understanding, a way for the Travani to connect with something they had never experienced, and Cole, whether he liked it or not, was now at the center of that search for connection. Captain Cole Harrison woke up with the first rays of the planet's twin suns casting their light through the thin walls of the chamber. The air was thick with moisture, and the atmosphere outside hummed with strange, unfamiliar sounds. He rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the weight of the night's events. The Travani, the alien race that had captured them, had offered nothing but questions, and now he couldn't help but feel like he was stuck in the middle of something far bigger than any space mission he had ever been on. His mind kept returning to the Princess Aranara, her violet eyes. The way she had looked at him with such intensity when she had asked her question kept replaying in his thoughts. What was it that she truly wanted to understand about humanity? Why had she chosen him to answer such a personal question? He knew they were dealing with an entirely different species, but there was something in her gaze that made him think they weren't as different as they seemed. The soft hum of the ship's communication system interrupted his thoughts, and he sat up, swinging his legs off the bed and standing. He made his way to the common area, where the rest of the crew had already gathered. They looked just as uneasy as he felt. Lieutenant Sawyer, his first officer, was sitting at the table, staring out the large window that overlooked the alien city. "Good morning, Captain," she said without turning. "I think we're in trouble." Cole took a seat across from her, his gaze following hers toward the city. "I agree. These people are more than just strange." "I'm not sure what they want from us." "They're testing us," Sawyer replied. "I can feel it. They're not just curious about our biology."
It's deeper than that. They're searching for something.
Cole nodded, thinking back to the princess's question. It wasn't just about mating. That much was clear. They were trying to understand something about human connection, something that, from their perspective, might have been completely foreign. "We're in their hands now," Cole said. "I just hope they don't have plans to use us for something worse than just answers." Before Sawyer could respond, a soft knock on the door interrupted them. A Travani guard stepped into the room, bowing his head respectfully. "The princess requests your presence," the guard said in his melodic voice, his tone impassive. "Follow me." Cole exchanged a glance with Sawyer. There was no sense in refusing. They had already been brought here for a reason, and the best way to understand what was happening was to cooperate. They followed the guard through the corridors of the alien structure, the walls pulsing with a soft, otherworldly glow. The deeper they went into the heart of the building, the more Cole couldn't help but feel like they were being drawn into the unknown. The architecture around them seemed to grow more intricate, like the building itself was alive, responding to their presence. Finally, they reached a large chamber. Inside, the Travani Princess Aranara was waiting. Her regal presence filled the room, and even though she stood still, it felt like she was always in motion. She wore an elaborate gown that shimmered in the dim light, the fabric flowing like liquid. Her eyes met Cole's, and for a moment, he felt as though she was reading him, peeling back his layers without a single word. "Captain Harrison," Aranara said softly, her voice like music. "I hope you've slept well." "I've had better nights," Cole replied. "We've been thinking about your question." "About what you want to understand." Aranara tilted her head, her gaze never leaving him. "You are not the first humans we have encountered. But you are the first to have intrigued me so. Your species has something that we do not." Her voice held a tinge of sadness. "It is the way you connect with one another. It is something we have lost." Cole felt a stir of sympathy for her, but he held his ground. "What is it that you want from us? Why do you keep asking these questions?" The princess stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. I need to understand your bond. I need to know how it feels to have something that makes you whole, to love, to be loved. Cole's heart tightened as the weight of her words hit him. This wasn't just a matter of curiosity anymore. The princess, for all her power and knowledge, was asking for something that was fundamentally human, a connection that her people, the Trevani, seemed to lack. We don't just mate, princess, Cole said carefully. Humans form emotional connections, bonds that go beyond physical attraction. We connect on a level that is hard to explain, but it's not just about love. It's about trust, loyalty, and understanding. Aranara's eyes darkened. And how does one achieve such a bond? Cole hesitated. He didn't know how to explain something so personal. He had never been asked to break it down like this before. It's about finding someone who understands you, who accepts you for who you are, someone you can trust with your life. That trust forms the foundation, and love is built on that. The princess nodded slowly, her lips pressed together in deep thought. Trust, she repeated. You speak of something so fragile, yet so strong. We have never known this. Our people do not form these bonds. We do not understand love in the way you do. Cole's heart went out to her. He had seen it in her eyes, this longing, this emptiness. The Trevani were a race of incredible intellect and technology, but they lacked something essential, something that made humanity what it was. We could teach you, Cole said before he could stop himself. Not all of us are perfect at it, but we know how it works. If you really want to understand love and connection, maybe we can help. Aranara's eyes widened, and for the first time, she seemed vulnerable. She stepped closer to Cole, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke. You would teach us, even after all we have done? Even after we captured your crew? Cole glanced at Sawyer, who stood nearby, but said nothing. You don't know what you're asking. This isn't something you can learn overnight. It's not a lesson or a set of rules. It's a feeling, an understanding. I am willing to learn, Aranara said, her voice steady now, filled with determination. My people have reached the limits of what we can achieve with technology. We have mastered every possible advancement, but we are empty. We have nothing left to search for, except you. Cole didn't know how to respond. He had never been in this position before, and he wasn't sure what it meant for the future of his crew or even for his own future. But he knew one thing. This princess, this alien, was asking him to help her understand something that was the very essence of humanity. And he wasn't sure he could refuse. I don't know how we can teach you this, Cole said finally, but I will try, for the sake of your people. Aranara's gaze softened, and she nodded slowly. I will do whatever it takes to understand, and perhaps we can show you something in return, something that may help you understand us as well. Cole felt a surge of unease. What could the Trevani offer in return for this kind of knowledge? He wasn't sure, but he knew that this was just the beginning of something far bigger than they had imagined. We will begin with simple things, Aranara continued. We will start by understanding trust, and we will see where it takes us. The room fell silent, and for a moment Cole felt like they were standing on the edge of something unknown. The princess's words hung in the air, and as they did, Cole realized that their journey on this alien world was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The next few days passed by in a blur. Cole spent his time trying to figure out how to approach the princess's request to understand human emotions and connections. He had never imagined himself teaching an alien race about love, trust, and the deep bonds that formed the heart of humanity. It felt strange to explain something so personal, something that wasn't easy to articulate, especially to someone so different. Aranara, the Trevani princess, had shown a genuine desire to learn. Each day she came to the crew asking them questions about love, trust, and bonding. Her curiosity was insatiable, and she absorbed every word they spoke, as though their every answer might hold the key to unlocking the missing piece of her understanding. But as the days went on, it became clear that her questions weren't just about knowledge. They were about something deeper. She seemed to be searching for a way to fill the emptiness that had long plagued her people. One morning, Cole and his crew were summoned to the central hall of the Trevani city. The room was vast, filled with intricate patterns on the walls that glowed faintly in the low light. The soft hum of energy filled the air, creating an almost hypnotic atmosphere. As they entered, Aranara was already waiting for them. Her posture was regal, yet there was something different in her expression. She seemed more vulnerable than before, her usual calm demeanor replaced with a hint of uncertainty. "Captain Harrison," she greeted him, her voice softer than usual. "I have been thinking about your people's connection, about how it goes beyond just the physical. I have decided to put it to the test. I want to understand how far this trust, this bond, can go." Cole raised an eyebrow. "A test? What kind of test?" Aranara's eyes met his, and for the first time she looked directly at him with a seriousness that made him uneasy. "A trial. I want to see if your people can truly form the kind of connection you describe. I want to know if the bonds you speak of are real or if they are merely words." Cole's heart skipped a beat. He had expected that her curiosity would lead them to deeper discussions, but a test was something else entirely. What kind of trial did she have in mind? And more importantly, what would it mean for the crew if they failed? "You want us to prove something?" Cole asked, his voice steady despite the sudden knot in his stomach. Aranara nodded. "Yes. Prove that humans can form connections that are more than just biology. Prove that you can be more than just your instincts, your physical desires. I want to see it for myself." Cole glanced at his crew. They were all silent, waiting for his decision. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the whole crew, about everything they had worked for, and everything they stood to lose. "Fine," he said after a long pause. "We'll do it. But I need to know what you have in mind. What kind of test are we talking about?" Aranara's gaze softened, and she stepped forward. "I will guide you through it. You will face a series of challenges, each designed to test the strength of your bonds with one another. It will not be easy. You will be tested physically, emotionally, and mentally, and at the end of it, I will know if what you say is true." Cole nodded. "We're ready." For the next few hours, the crew was led through a series of trials that pushed them to their limits. The first test was physical. Each member of the crew was paired with a Trevani guardian, a warrior-like figure who was tasked with challenging them in combat. The idea was simple. If humans could work together, form trust in a high-pressure situation, it would prove the strength of their bonds. Cole faced a tall Trevani warrior whose eyes glowed like purple fire. The creature was faster, stronger, and more agile than any human. But Cole had fought in many battles before. He knew how to use his surroundings, how to anticipate his opponent's moves. He wasn't fighting to win, but to show that trust was something that could be formed, even in a battle. His movements were precise, each one calculated, as he dodged the Trevani's strikes. They were testing more than just physical strength. They were testing how well Cole could work with his instincts. In the heat of the fight, Cole felt a rush of adrenaline, but he also knew he needed to keep calm, to stay in control. His opponent might be stronger, but Cole had something that Trevani didn't. Human resilience. In the end, Cole managed to disarm the Trevani warrior, not by overpowering him, but by using strategy and the strength of his focus. He could feel the warrior's respect, and for the first time he understood what Aranara was looking for. This wasn't just about brute force. It was about trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in your ability to stay calm, to think through the situation. The next trial was emotional. The crew was asked to face their deepest fears, to confront the very things they had tried to bury. They were led into a chamber that seemed to stretch into infinity, its walls made of liquid light. Each member of the crew was confronted with a vision, an illusion of their worst fear, something that had haunted them for years. For Cole, it was the memory of a mission gone wrong, a time when he had failed to protect his crew, when he had made the wrong choice, and several good men had died. The vision played out in front of him, showing the faces of the men who had perished under his command. It was a crushing feeling, one that he had never truly let go of. The guilt, the self-doubt, it all came flooding back in an instant. But he remembered what he had learned from his time with the crew, what it meant to trust, to lean on each other when the weight of the world felt too heavy. He didn't have to face this alone. Slowly, he took a deep breath and stepped forward, the vision fading as he focused on the strength of his crew, on the connections they had built together. When the trial ended, Cole was exhausted, but he felt a sense of clarity. He had faced his fear, not alone, but with the strength of the people who trusted him. The final test was mental. The crew was asked to solve an intricate puzzle that required cooperation and quick thinking. The puzzle wasn't something that could be solved by individual effort. It required them to communicate, to work together in a way that they never had before. There were moments of frustration, moments when each member of the crew wanted to give up, but they didn't. They trusted each other, and slowly, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. When the last piece clicked into place, the chamber brightened, and the voice of Aranara filled the air. "You have passed the trials," she said. "You have shown me that the bonds you speak of are real." Cole and the crew stood in silence, taking in the weight of what had just happened. They had faced their fears, tested their strength, and worked together in a way that they had never imagined. But more than that, they had proven to themselves that their connections were something worth fighting for. Aranara stepped forward, her eyes glowing with admiration. "I see now what you mean."
It is not enough to simply exist. It is the connections that make you strong, that make you who you are.
I had never understood this before. Cole met her gaze, his voice steady. It's not easy, but when you find someone you can trust, someone who stands by you no matter what, that's when you realize what it all means. Aranara nodded slowly, her expression softening. "I believe you, Captain Harrison. I have learned more than I expected." For the first time, Cole saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes, a hope that wasn't just for her people, but for herself as well. The test was over, but the journey was just beginning. And whatever came next, Cole knew that the bonds they had forged in the trials would be the key to whatever future they faced. The trials had left them all exhausted, both physically and mentally. Cole could feel the weight of the experiences pressing down on him as he sat alone in his quarters that evening. The events of the past few days had been intense, more intense than anything he could have imagined when he first set foot on this alien world. The Trevani princess, Aranara, had led them through tests that pushed them to the edge of their limits, and in the process, she had forced them to confront things about themselves that they had long buried. But despite the exhaustion, there was a sense of clarity that had emerged from it all. The crew had come together in a way they never had before. They had learned to trust each other, not just as comrades, but as people, as humans, with flaws, fears, and strengths. And through it all, they had shown Aranara something about humanity that she could not have understood through observation alone. For the first time since they arrived on the Trevani homeworld, Cole felt like they had made some progress. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew that the connection between them and the Trevani had changed. Aranara had learned something important, something that went beyond words or explanations. But as Cole lay back in his bed, his mind returned to her. Aranara's intense gaze, the way she had looked at him throughout the trials, remained burned in his mind. She had learned about trust, about emotional bonds, but there was still something about her that made him wonder. She had come so far in such a short amount of time, but he could still see the emptiness in her eyes. As much as she had learned, there was still a part of her that was searching for something more, something that Cole couldn't quite place. The next day, the crew was summoned to the central hall again. This time, it wasn't for another test, but for a conversation. Aranara had requested their presence, and they all gathered in the same room where they had faced the trials just days before. The atmosphere was different now. The air felt lighter, less tense. Aranara stood in the center of the room, her usual regal demeanor softened, but there was still a quiet strength in her presence. "Captain Harrison," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You and your crew have shown me something that I never could have understood before. I have seen the way humans connect with one another, the way you trust, love, and support each other. I have seen the strength in your bonds." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the entire crew before settling back on Cole. "But I must admit there is still something I do not fully understand. I see the connection, but I wonder, can it truly last? Can your people continue to trust each other even when the odds are stacked against you? Can you love without fear of loss?" Cole felt the weight of her words, and he knew exactly what she was asking. She was searching for something deeper, something beyond what the trials had revealed. It wasn't just about trust or love. It was about the endurance of those bonds in the face of adversity, in the face of the inevitable struggles that came with being human. "It's not easy," Cole said, his voice steady as he stood before her. "Trust, love, and connection are all fragile things. They can be broken, and sometimes they are. But that's the risk we take. We understand that the bond we form with others isn't perfect. There will always be pain. There will always be loss. But that's part of being human. It's what makes us who we are." Aranara's eyes softened, and she stepped closer. "You accept that pain? You accept the risk knowing that the connection is worth it?" "Yes," Cole said without hesitation, "because in the end, it's the only thing that truly matters. The connection we form with each other gives us strength. It makes us better, and that's why we keep trying even when things are difficult. We don't give up on each other." Aranara was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on Cole. He could see the struggle within her, the part of her that was still unsure, still searching. "Your people are incredible," she said finally, her voice quieter now. "I have seen your strength, your resilience. But I wonder if we could ever be like you." Cole looked at her, understanding the depth of her question. The Trevani were a powerful and advanced species, but their culture was different. They had never known the kind of emotional depth that humans possessed. And while they had come so far in understanding humanity, there was still a gap that could not easily be bridged. "I don't know if you can be exactly like us," Cole said gently. "But you can find your own way. Your people don't have to be exactly like us to understand what we've shown you. You can learn to connect, to trust in your own way. It might be different, but it doesn't make it any less real." Aranara nodded slowly, her gaze distant as she processed his words. "I understand," she said softly. "Perhaps we will never experience the depth of emotion that your people do, but I believe we can begin to understand it."
"I believe we can start building our own connections, even if they are not exactly like yours."
For the first time, Cole saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something deeper. She wasn't just seeking knowledge for the sake of learning. She was seeking it for herself, for her people, for a future where they could learn to connect in a way they had never known before. "I'll help you," Cole said, his voice firm but kind. "If you're willing to try, we'll be here to guide you. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight, but we'll help you take the first step." Aranara smiled, a small but genuine smile. "Thank you, Captain Harrison. I think we have much to learn from each other." As the crew left the hall, Cole couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. They had come so far in such a short amount of time, but this was only the beginning. The bond they had forged with the Travani was something unique. It wasn't just about teaching them what it meant to be human. It was about learning from them as well. They weren't the same, but they were connected now in a way that transcended species. Over the next few weeks, the crew and the Travani worked together, learning from one another, slowly building a relationship based on trust and understanding. The process was slow, but every small step forward was a victory. Aranara continued to ask questions, to explore what it meant to truly connect with others. And as she did, she began to see the value of the bonds humans formed, not just as a biological necessity, but as something far greater. Cole had no illusions that their journey with the Travani was over. It was just beginning. But he knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, they had made a real connection. And that connection would be the key to building a future together. As he stood on the balcony overlooking the alien city, watching the twin suns set, Cole felt a sense of peace. He had come to this planet seeking to help others, but in the end, he had learned something himself. The connections between humans were not just a matter of survival, they were what made life worth living. And now, the Travani had begun to see that too.